Hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, ay, ay, shit, luin postin, luis chulhuit.
Welcome to Podcast IRC, conversations with Indigenous scholars to advance understandings and gain new knowledge, hosted by the Indigenous Research Center at Salish Kootenai College. Okay, so that was a clip of Madeline Charley singing, I guess what would be typically labeled as I don't know exactly what, maybe a life song, but really just a song that I suppose you'd sing just when you're feeling a need to express some joy of life, I guess, in a way. I'm not really exactly sure. These are one of the kind of songs that don't really fit into any of the particular genres that we've spoke about, such as telling of the deeds or siyudlam or something of that nature. It's almost like what you'd consider like a personal song, maybe a song that she got from spirit as a spiritual gift, but not as for power or medicine, but just a song to express the joy of life in a way. But there may be more to that song that was not recorded or taken down on exactly its meaning or its origin. But that's about all we know of that song. And I'm not sure if there's any other tribes that have songs like that are really not for a very specific purpose that we've spoke of before, as a medicine or for the performance of some ceremonial process, but more just for singing to enjoy life and to express a gratitude, I guess, in a way. But who knows? But it does reach into a deeper concept, I guess, that I wanted to highlight today, that I wanted to bounce some ideas off of people and get some input. But that's really on this idea or this concept of time and how time is perceived in a kind of a tribal or a native world view. So we can go down many roads based on that very broad question. But generally speaking, when I think of some of the issues that arise when we talk about time, is that we've really adopted a really modern concept, and it bleeds into many of the processes that we embrace. And one of them that I was thinking about today was this idea of the strategic plan, the ill-fated strategic plan in Indian country. Now, have any of you been part of a strategic planning process? Brenda, no. Marty, no. Aaron?
Yeah. Well,
strategic planning process?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I've been a part of at least a handful, and they become more of a more or less a kind of like that car you buy off your cousin and it breaks down in in about a week, and that it sits in your backyard for about 10 to 12 years, collecting mice and boxes of old baby
All
clothes.
it needs is a transmission.
Yeah. All it needs is that transmission to let her to fire it up. But no, it sits there, and you look at it, and you know it's there, but it don't get used. And so I was thinking about this idea of the strategic plan in relation to the concept of time, and I thought, well, there's got to be some reason why that just doesn't seem to fit in our traditional way of thinking, even in the modern times. So, what I want to know from our short list of participants today is what are your thoughts on the concept of time, mostly in relation to the time before the advent of modernism.
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I kind of heard a new thing recently, and it's not really to do with Native tradition itself, but it does talk about time. There's been studies done of cultures, and of course, this is through an anthropology route, but there is findings that cultures do have different concepts of time, obviously, but there's things called monochronic and polychronic. And well, all I can say is Indian time is really a thing. It's not just made up to make excuses of being late. And as all of us probably are, we're late for everything, but it's because our cultural background didn't value time and schedules as much as, say, Western Europeans. So it is a thing that anthropologists have studied, and it's. I think it's important to acknowledge something like that, like saying Indian time or there's island time, that it is a real thing, and just as an example, Aaron, as you can hear through his heavy breathing on the microphone, he's eating dinner during our podcast. So that's a concept known as polychronic. He's got a schedule to keep, but his stomach's also got its own schedule.
Right. So I get that, and but some would argue, and who would argue with you would be my yaya. She's hitting her 80s, and she gets really, really upset about the use of the word Indian time.
Mm.
She says, "Ta, there's no such thing." She said, my folks and my grandfolks were up bright and early, and they were never late for anything. Says Indian time is just an excuse for young people to be lazy. They think it's funny to be late because they're trying to live up to a stereotype of Indian time. So, what do you think about that?
My grandpa always used to tell me that if you were 5 minutes early means you were on time, and if you showed up right on time, then you were late. So that's always stuck with me too. But I don't know. Indian time is something different. A lot of people do it to joke around, but I feel like there is a time and place. Everything happens for a reason. Whether that reason is that you're just scattered and lost all the time, or something is holding you back, like a greater force. Because I've been in many instances of where if I would have left when I should have left, something would have happened, so it's a weird concept of like timing is everything. That's being late has actually saved me a few times from some things, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we could embrace that idea that things happen because they're supposed to happen in a certain way, and there's a larger force at play that is guiding really or orchestrating events for us, and it just depends on ability to, I guess, develop some luck that would put us on the right side of things, or maybe develop some bad luck that would put us on the wrong side of things. Um, that's an interesting concept, but I think, and this is what I think, and maybe Aaron can help me understand this a little better, is that, that concept of time and that idea of being late are very different in the past than it was today, primarily because time is measured now by the second and by the minute, whereas in the past there was not that kind of time keeping. So from an anthropological perspective, I know, Marty, you talked about, was it polychromatic, or is that a color? I don't know what that is. Polychromatic. That's what is that? Isn't that in music or something? The chromatic scale. I don't know where I'm going with this. So
It's right in there with predundant.
I think so.
Yeah.
Polychromatic.
Well, before Aaron, I know Aaron's getting wound up. He's getting ready to say something. But first, what is polychronic? What does polychronic mean?
Go ahead, Marty.
Well, just means like the priorities of a culture are different. So like you're saying, you just mentioned we didn't keep track of time by the second, down to the second. It was kind of more relative, So
yeah,
in terms of adjusting to today's standards, yeah, there is morals and kind of ethics to be on time for things. For us now, we have to, because everything is measured down to the second. But part of it is more like prioritizing things in their life. Like they'll prioritize family over a job, or like what Brenda mentioned, some things she stayed longer for a particular reason kind of averted you from disaster, right? Is that kind of what you said, Brenda?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like kind of schedules are more loose,
right?
But obviously, if you have a job or something, of course you're going to have to abide by the standards, or otherwise you get fired, like I did from my veterinarian job. I was just being honest, and right on the time clocking in. You just clocked in. It wasn't a machine. You had to pen it in, and I would come in. I'd just be honest and put like 2 minutes or 3 minutes after the hour I'm supposed to be there, and I was just honest. So it all said like 2:02, 2:03, 2:04, because I'm just trying to be honest. And then the guy fired me and used that as his main ammunition, plus his depressing.
Plus his depression. What did you say?
Yeah, the whole job was depressing, so it was win-win.
Okay. You said the veterinarian had some depression and he just decided to take it out on you. Okay, so polychronic doesn't mean nothing to do with marijuana legalization and the types of polychronic. Okay, good.
No.
So Brenda, good joke. I get it. Polychronic.
No, so polychronic is multiple, right? It's multiple individual, right? Shondine, oh my God.
Yeah, a lot of chronic. A lot of different types of chronic. Okay, Aaron's getting wound up. He got a bite of his bacon cheeseburger.
No, it's a taco, man.
Oh.
A bite of his bacon taco. It looked like there's bacon on it. Was there a pile of bacon on there?
No, it's salsa and chips.
Oh, the bacon looked like, or the salsa looked like bacon. Okay, anyway, go, Aaron. I know you got it. You got something. You're working up to it.
I don't.
You have nothing.
Well, I mean, what Marty's talking about, I guess I can just. He's talking about monochronic and polychronic cultures, which in anthropology, polychronic is typical of like a culture that has multiple things going at one time, and the use of time is different in a polychronic culture. And so tribal
Okay.
people are typically polychronic. And that's because a tribal society can value the multitask. You're doing a bunch of
Right.
different things at one time. So therefore, if you're kind of thinking about it in time and like being on time, you're never really late or you're never really early because you got 40 things going at one time. So you're there for all of it, if that makes sense. Where like in a
Kind of does.
monochronic
Yeah.
culture is more very typical of like the monarchy and things like that, where it's very like one thing at a time, one step at a time. I mean, but these are like general terms, so you don't want to be like
Yeah.
overly general and say like white folk never multitask. Like that's not that's not what those
Right.
terms are for. You know, they're just
Yeah.
generalized terms to give you some gist of kind of how people think. Now, I think the concept and the stereotype of Indian time is both true and false.
Yes.
Obviously, tribal people in the past were not regimented to the minute, right? Nor was any culture
Right.
regimented to the minute. Now,
Up
if you were
until
to
today.
follow up until today, yeah, if you were to follow like the clock, like the way tribal people, or especially Crow Indians, I know, kept track of time, they were still very much like, we're going to do this at this time.
Yeah.
And people did value punctuality, but I don't think it was like something you put on your resume. It's like, oh, Marty's always on time. Like that's a value now. That's like
Right.
that, and even me, I'm a sucker for that. I like punctuality. I like when people say let's meet at, well, I don't know, 6:00.
Yeah.
I don't want them logging in at 6:05.
Oh, I get it. That's a jab.
I'm
That's a jab.
just saying. No. And I don't know
So,
if that's
okay.
just something I've learned in the field, but my dad has a strong work ethic, and I think just growing up seeing that, and then both my grandfathers were very much like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm just assimilated in that sense, but I do believe. So here's an example.
Okay.
In my youths, well, actually my like early teenage years or my late
We gotta
teenage
pray
years,
for the Utes.
the Utes,
Okay.
the Northern
Pray
Utes,
for the Utes.
They always had dances at New Year's in Crow. So
Yeah.
from Christmas to New Year's, they dance every night, and they seem to not do this as much anymore. They're always getting canceled and stuff. But it used to always be the winner of the hand game tournament in the spring. They got New Year's night, and each district would put on a dance. And I had never heard anyone say like, "Hey, we're gonna dance tonight at 6:00," or "They're gonna dance tonight
Right.
at 7," or whatever. But it just seemed to be right around 6ish or 7. Everyone was there, and the dance took off.
Yeah.
So obviously, there is some sense of time that tribal people are going by.
Yeah.
Even today, when no one's saying we're doing this at this time, I personally never heard anyone say like, because there's no grand entry. So like it's not like that's the thing, because that at Apollo, that's kind of the thing. So
Mhm.
grand entry
Right.
is the show. You have visitors
Yeah.
coming in to see the show, and they want to see the
Yeah.
grand entry. Where like New Year's dances are what some people call a traditional powwow. I've heard that that's kind of a
Yeah.
thing now.
It is.
The only person you have to wait for is the drum owner and the drumstick owner, and they have to be present for the dance to start. And once they're there, then you can start dancing, and people show up as they show up. But it always seems to be right around the same time. Another example I have is in the Crow Sundance. I've never heard anyone say we're going into the lodge at this time on Thursday.
Right.
It just happens. People show up. It seems like right within a 30-minute period, you have no dancers there to having them all there lined up behind the lodge to go in. So I think there's still a sense of being on time, wanting to be there when it's happening. But to say that it's the same, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going anywhere with this, but
No, you are.
somebody stop me.
You, no, you are. And the one question I wanted to follow up on, and by the way, the jab at Brenda about being late.
Oh,
that's
the
not-
jab
I
was
don't-
towards me.
I'm just kidding.
She's even late on the joke.
I know. No, it was me. I just trying to pawn it off on somebody.
Yeah, I thought
I was late. You're
I was-
good.
I logged in at 5:54.
Everybody simmer down. Simmer down. Especially Marty. Just sit back and relax, okay?
Yeah, but
There you
when
go.
Aaron, when you're talking about that, it sounds really unnatural. I feel like if you were to say, "Hey, we're going into lodge at 6:00 on Thursday," like that, just kind of seems odd to think about if that was to happen. I don't know. It's
But
just-
here's the thing: I don't know. They may do that. I'm not privy to that, but I've gone in a few times, and no one ever said we're going in at this time. You just kind of you're there, and then
Yeah.
it happens. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, because I think the most natural thing from the process that I see it is, oh, well, we got to prep for it, and then maybe we'll go start when the sun goes down, or, the cues to the day or something is what triggers that agi. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about that uncomfortableness of regimenting, especially ceremonial things to a clock is kind of odd. Was you going to say something, Marty?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of, and I'm probably I like this the talk so far, but I wanted to do a little disclaimer. I probably didn't explain polychronic very accurately, so
Well, I really
but
didn't get it that accurate either.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
yeah, that's my fault.
Well, what I
But
want
I'm not
after
here
you
to defend it, but another example of kind of this idea of time being flexible would be, say, when you open medicine bundles, when do you do it? After the first thunder, so you can't put a date on that.
Yeah.
So there's things like that, that happen, and then so that's kind of, I think, a good example of what polychronic means, if you know what I mean. Because they don't say we're opening the new baseball stadium after the first thunder.
Right.
Do you hear that? He's like, no, it's gonna be.
But imagine
July
if they
30th.
did. Imagine if they did.
Then that baseball team would win every game.
No, it's cool. You bring up an interesting thing, because even like using first thunder as an example, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
There's some excitement to hearing the first thunder. Even if you're not involved in those things directly, in those ceremonial things, when you hear it, it kind of signifies to you like, oh man, some things can happen now. And even my kids, like my older boy, he was in Missoula one day and he texted me, he's like, just heard the first thunder. And like, he's not involved in any of that stuff. And but even it marked this kind of thing. So we tease and we say, what if they open the new baseball stadium after the first thunder? Imagine the excitement of the community, even in Missoula or Billings or wherever. Phoenix, Arizona, if you say, we're going to wait for the first thunder. Boy, when that first thunder happens, man, the city would be like, it's happening now. So that excitement's kind of fun,
That is.
That's kind of a side thing, I guess, but
swimming trunks on sale after the first thunder.
Yeah, dude. What if they did that?
That'd be cool.
They did that?
That would be cool, man. Yeah, we need to get one of these IRA tribes to start adopting that polychronic time schedule. Yeah, so
more poly and less chronic.
Yeah, more.
This just in: after the birds fly south, the new Avengers movie will be released.
Yeah. The first chirp of the gopher signifies.
Oh man, I think it could get cool. I think it could get pretty cool. You would have people paying attention to like their surroundings. If you said, "Hey man, as soon as the geese come back, we'll do it, dude. We're gonna jump in a 3-on-3 tournament."
Yeah.
What I mean?
Per cap,
Dude,
per cap distribution.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea, man. That is a really good idea.
It actually kind
I
of
don't know.
charges me up a bit just talking about it.
does.
Yeah.
It does.
Kind of amped a little bit.
We're gonna march right on down to the tribal complex and put together an initiative.
We're gonna round dance around the world.
Propose.
Get an ordinance passed. A round dance ordinance.
We're round dancing around the world. You remember that one?
Yeah. I wasn't too fond of that.
We're round dancing
No.
around the world.
No.
We're round dancing around the world. Let's all join hands.
Oh man.
We're
Yeah.
round dancing around.
Okay, Brenda's got something. Here she goes.
I do. Hey, so to bring it back to the song, the introduction of the song, and you said that the lady that was singing, what was her name? Madeline
Charley, yeah.
Okay, so you said that that song wasn't really sung at any particular time, but what I got from it, it was like a feel-good song on like when you're harvesting berries or something, you know, because I was hearing that song and it sounded really jolly. And as we're talking about the concept of time, you know, if right now is berry picking time, you know, and I'm sure that people would go and pick these berries and sing songs. And I feel like that would be one of them. But another concept of time that's not by the clock is, you know, when the water goes down. Well, didn't you help do a project with the heart of the monster?
Was the project.
You were the project, weren't you? Yeah. And so I feel like that concept of the two, do you want to talk about that or no? Or because I feel like that's a concept of time as well.
Well, it is. Yeah. And what I was leading into is that idea exactly right there that we started joking around about is the observation of landscape markers or landscape cues that really was really the clock at those times. So the clearing of snow on certain features in the mountains, it can tell you something about an event or something going on in some distance from where you are, or maybe even a marker of what other tribes might be doing. I know, for example, you know, that heart of the monster was one example that was used to determine what the river crossings might be down the trail. But that was used in conjunction with other things that I'm sure it wasn't used alone, because there was probably other markers that would indicate some events. So, for example, in conjunction with that clearing of the snow, the Salish people here and probably other tribes would watch for the blooming of the wild roses, and that would tell you when the buffalo were nice and fat and could be, you know, have the maximum amount of nutritional value, I suppose. So in conjunction with all these landscape markers, you know, I think that being the clock, you know, that we watch today, you know, that concept alone is, I think is a really important thing that we need to start considering, especially if we have this idea of sovereign rights, you know, and the sovereignty of not only of governance, but you know, that idea should also bleed into our daily lives. Sovereignty over time, sovereignty over knowledge, all those things, and tackling it from the standpoint of time, I think, is a pretty important thing, especially for our research agenda. So how do we then craft this research agenda or this research approach, keeping in tune with that concept of time? Copy that. So anything else on that concept of time in the past? I think it's pretty clear if you're a student of I don't know, what do you call it, past, the days gone by. If you're a student of those things, then I don't know what you call it. Help me out here.
It's called history.
The history. Happy days.
Jeez Louise. Days gone by.
The days gone by. I was trying to get a little poetic there.
You sound like a Baptist preacher.
Well, I can do that pretty good.
It's different than a Pentecostal preacher, a Baptist preacher.
Oh, okay. Well, you'll have to show me that sometime. I'll have to perfect that.
Yeah, that's what we'll
Yeah.
do.
Let's do. Yeah. After the break. Okay. Well, let's listen to this next song, and then we'll go from there. You guys ready?
Ready.
That didn't sound exciting enough, and I only heard one ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were born ready.
Ready?
We're
to
here,
go.
dude.
Yeah. I'm sure. Why not?
This is gonna be a good one.
Okay. Here we go.
Eulem tlwyn bochod sydd ewych gwn.
Okay, so that was another song that is kind of in the same category of I guess unclassified, but again it's just a song to express your joy or your gratitude of something. And I guess from the song which was Ellen BigSam, I guess some of the information about that song was that it was sung oftentimes when war parties or hunting parties returned to camp, different from the scout song, but more to express gratitude for those folks coming back. So it could be considered kind of sort of like a parade song, but it's really unclassified in that specific genre, but just to indicate the happiness of some event that was successful. So this is what I want to know now. And we have this job before us, and I don't know how well we're doing at it, but I'm really leaning on you folks as experts and as practitioners of many different important things, whether it be knowledge of your academic discipline or just regular old what I call street knowledge, which is pretty important thing. But how then do we operate, or I should say, how then do we generate knowledge? And in particular, I'm talking about indigenous knowledge or tribal knowledge or traditional knowledge. How do we generate that while still keeping the concept of time in the right frame of mind for the practitioner, or not the practitioner, but the consumer of that knowledge, that being the tribal communities? And this goes back to this idea of the strategic plan. Now, I've sat for 3 days, 8 hours a day, putting together a strategic plan to do some really important thing that's important to the community. And then you get this big document, and it forecasts forward 10, 20 years on the goals and objectives. And it seems to be a really bulky and unusable tool in tribal life, because it's my understanding, and maybe I'm way off base, but I don't think we look that far ahead, 10 years, even 2 years ahead in the things that we do. So what I want to know from you guys is, I want to know your thoughts on that. Does that seem right? Does that seem wrong? Go. Hit it.
I think in a business perspective, planning out 5 years is beneficial. It's more of a guideline than anything. Whether you meet those objectives ahead of time or some things happen to where you meet them after time, I think that that's a practical sense. But culturally, it's hard to put a timeline on culture like that and trying to revive it.
Right.
I think that a lot of people keep in mind that our elders are getting older, and so there is a little bit of a flexibility of time, but
Mm-hmm.
I, it's not like hold them to it type of scenario. I don't think, anyways. It'd be hard to implement that. I don't know.
Do you think we're the first generation, or maybe not the first, but we're in the first kind of era? So us and maybe the generation or two before us that are concerned with preservation?
I don't think so, but I think we're in a different era of that, and I think we have maybe more tools than say the folks did in the 70s. Like we have this vast network of knowledge called the internet. You guys heard of it? The internet?
The World Wide Web, you mean?
Oh yeah, yeah.
On
Sorry.
the line?
On the line.
It's on the line, yeah. It's on the line.
Well, it is the line.
You connect to this thing called Wi-Fi, and then it opens the door to this vast web of knowledge. No, I think I don't know. What are you getting at?
So you're talking about a strategic plan? Are you kind of using that? You were using that as kind of a springboard or whatever?
Yeah, kind of an example.
And then this idea of planning and like the idea of looking ahead and and then you made mention of tribes may have not done that. Really?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I was asking then, when it comes to looking forward in the state of Native people in the future, are we one of the first generations to have that concern?
Boy, I don't know.
Because in that sense, that's a strategic plan, right? Is if people get together and say, this is what the decisions we make right now, this is going to have this effect. This is what's going to be caused by that. And therefore this can happen and we can ensure such and such things. And then if plan B, if this happens, then we go this route, and plan C to mitigate certain things.
Yeah.
So
do you think it's needed?
In a sense, it's a cultural,
do you think it's needed, whether it's happening or not? Do you think that there does need to be a strategic plan?
For who?
For anyone, for any culture.
Oh, I don't want this to turn into a strategic plan discussion.
Okay.
Let's
I'm immediately regretting my statement. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I guess so. It's just an example, and this is so to get it off of this idea of the strategic plan. Let's put it in a different context. So,
I know what I was going to say.
Okay, I'm ready. Go.
I was using that question to springboard the idea of time and this idea of the past, present, and the future. And do tribes have the same concept? Or is this one of those things where we're like overthinking it and we're kind of glorifying or trying to overcomplicate the way tribal people think and thought and continue to think? I think sometimes Native people were guilty of buying into the stereotypes of us, and that being this kind of prophetic, mystic idea that we can somehow put our ears to the ground, we can figure out what's going to happen, we have foresight and all that. And and that's true. I think some individuals do, but for the most part, we're humans, and I think our attitudes and our cultural knowledge is based on the environment that surrounds us. So what I'm getting at is that if our concept of time today is based on our culture and our worldview, then for sure that has to be the environment that we live in, which is a completely different environment than those in the past.
Correct.
Okay, so then
Yes.
is it fair to say that we can accurately critique how tribal people view time in the past?
Yeah. If we embrace that and say we're just way too different, we can't even conceptualize it. Yeah, I could partially agree with that, but really, it wasn't that far back in time if you think about it.
Yeah, but a lot's changed, man.
Yeah,
Like a lot's
a lot
changed.
has. So okay, so yes, agree. But let me throw
I don't
this
even
out
know
there.
if I with myself. I'm just saying it. So
Yeah,
I don't want people out there in the podcast world to be like, man, is this Aaron even an Indian?
yeah. What is he? What is he? I suppose. What is he?
He's a naysayer.
He is. He's a
He's a
party
ne'er do
pooper.
well. He's full of
What?
tomfoolery and ballyhoo.
Okay. So this is it. These are some of the markers or some of the keys that I would say help me to view into the past the best I can. So, for example, we examine things from the landscape today. We still do that today to predict what's going to happen next year. Not 2 years, not 4 years, not 8 years, but the next year.
Like, give me an example. Like, the apples are good this year, and next year they might not be, or how?
Well, for example, okay, so one example is like where the bees are putting their nests.
Oh, above ground or underground?
Are they nesting above or below? Yeah. So that tells me what the winter snow might be.
Yes.
That's one example. There's another example that I'm not too familiar with, but it has to do with the deer, the liver of the deer, and how one piece is elongated, and that's going to tell you again how bad the winter may or may not be. That's another example.
I've never heard that one before.
Yeah. So those still exist today. And another example is our what one might call the renewal ceremonialism, or those practices that help you prepare for the next year. And during those practices, you get clues about what's going to happen in your next year, but not for the next year or the next year. It's always that year. So that those little pieces tell me that we're still operating in some concept of time that may not align with the modern world.
Yeah, I would agree that we don't bite off more than we can chew, and looking towards the future, we don't get out of hand with that.
Yeah.
I mean, you do and you don't, because I think we understand the ripple effect of life, that if I make this decision, it's going to have this effect to some degree, but you're not prophetic in that sense. So like sometimes they'll say in the sweat, somebody might come in the sweat and they'll say, why did you want to have a sweat today? And they'll say, I had a dream that I seen the snow. And then they'll say, oh, good. So we'll ask that we'll see the snow. And so this might be the spring, or it might be the summer. And they'll say, and then that's it. As far as any other prayers or anything, it's really not even a thing. It's the idea of doing that, following the steps, but proclaiming that by saying, I had a dream and I seen snowflakes coming. Or they'll say, I had a dream last night and I seen the ice break. And so they say, so we'll ask that we all see that together. And then they'll say, that's it. That's so but I've never heard somebody say, in 10 years, I'm going to do this, or this happen.
Yeah.
And they'll just kind of leave it up. They'll leave it into the, I don't know what you call it, the ether.
The ether.
The
Ethernet.
Jinx.
I got my printer and my soundboard on my TV connected to the Ethernet.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's an IT joke. Anyway,
A poor.
it's not even a joke.
poor.
Very poor one. Yeah, I don't even know
Yeah,
what an
I think
Ethernet.
I think that's not a joke. I think that's a fact.
I think, which makes it funny because it's true.
Let's hear from Marty on this.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, Marty's got a sip of his. What are you drinking there, partner?
Big gulp, huh?
Was it a big gulp?
Americano.
It's an Americano. Yes, it's
Jeez.
an iced. That wasn't an iced Americano, sir.
Yeah, there's ice in there.
All right. Okay, what you got, partner?
Time is on your side.
Okay.
Time is on your side.
Isn't that a song?
I think so.
Was he going to sing it?
Time.
Well, I was getting there, but you cut me off, Sean.
Is on your side.
I think it says on my
yes,
side.
it is. Time. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I only know the chorus, so.
You always
gonna-
saying that you want to be free, but you keep coming back.
All right. Okay.
Let's bring it home.
Let's bring her home. So, Marty, anything to add on to that?
You know what I always say? Time is relative.
Like your uncle or your auntie?
Yeah, we're all related to time in some way. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly.
What is with all these auntie and uncle jokes lately? Anyway,
I don't know, man.
what is that?
There's a whole
What is
lot of
that?
anti stuff going on in it.
I
There
know.
it is.
And
I
let's
know.
be
If I was
honest,
auntie,
man.
I would not appreciate it.
I have
Would
an
not
auntie.
appreciate it.
I have an auntie named Karen, and I love her.
Oh
I
no!
love that woman.
Yeah.
and I don't appreciate the Karen jokes for my aunt.
Or the auntie jokes for Karen.
I have an auntie and a Barb. I have a Karen and a Barbara aunties, and I love them to death.
Oh
So,
man.
It's Karen is getting out of hand.
She wants to
Yeah.
talk to the manager.
This is getting out of
She's
hand.
upset about all the Karen jokes. Yeah. Okay. This is getting out of hand. Let me bring it
Mhm.
back in here because yes, true, all that true, I think. But I think that because and I believe that this polychronic idea is true, that yes, we do operate on that kind of concept of time. And I think it's one of the reasons, and this is the stereotype, and one of the reasons why we can't save. Everybody's got a zero balance in their savings account, or they don't have a savings account. I don't know if that's true, but but anyway, we also operate on the idea of time in other ways. Kind of a little bit about what Aaron was talking about, but when our children are born, we wish upon them to be a certain way or to have certain characteristics, which is very, very far, far in the future. Other examples might be the idea of kinship, right? Who we can and can't marry. So 6 generations out, you shouldn't be marrying anybody up to the 6th generation. At least that was the belief here. So that's really kind of a future idea. So I think the idea that we operated only on a annual or interannual cycle is true, yes, but I think in other ways we also operated on a time scale that may have spanned that annual cycle. Any examples you guys have or any thoughts on that? Because some tribes have the clan system, which is very extensive and comprises a lot of rules, but I don't know if you think or feel like it operates under some time scale. So let me know your thoughts on that.
I'll let Marty jump in on this one.
Marty, Marty muted and shook his head and said no. Got a hard
I
no.
don't got anything. Sorry.
Well,
Okay.
it's tough to say. I don't think kinship, at least our kinship, is not determined by time at all.
Okay.
Because here's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I heard some older men one time, this is a few years ago, and they said two-leggings. They were talking about Chief, or I don't know. Yeah, Chief two-leggings. And they said they were kind of bad-mouthing him. Right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And they were saying, "Oh, we're just teasing." And the guy said, "I'm a Whistling Water kid," referring to his clan. And Two Leggins is a Whistling Water kid, so I can tease him. And then they're all like, "Oh yeah," and then they all kind of started in again on Two Leggins. Two Leggins died in like 1919 or something. And this was like 2 years ago when I heard these guys talking.
Huh.
But the way they
So
talk, like it was happening right now, he was there.
Huh.
Does that make sense?
That's interesting. No, it does. So speaking about someone who's deceased as if they were now in the present.
Yeah. So then last night, in fact, this was the same guy. Last night I was on the phone with this guy, and he was telling me about a guy named Donnie Deernose. Donnie Deernose died in the 1970s. He was probably in his 70s at least when he passed away. Well-known man, but he was talking about, he's like, yeah, we were talking about good singers, and he said, "Oh, Donnie Deernose, he's a good singer. He knows all them beautiful songs."
Yeah.
That's how he said it.
As
he's
if
a good singer.
Speaking in the present tense.
Yeah. He said, Donnie's a good singer. He knows all them beautiful songs. And I thought that's pretty interesting.
Is that a product of a language proficiency? And
it's tough. It's tough to say.
I hear that a lot too.
Yeah,
right?
Go ahead.
They always, if I think it has have to be if you grew up around the Crow language a lot, or you speak it, or can understand it at least, that present tense is always used. Like Aaron was just mentioning, I'm pretty sure Donnie Deernose was passed away, right? And they still use the present tense speaking about him, and I've noticed that a lot. And at first I thought it was too like a kind of a misunderstanding of grammar, but it's must be some way that the language deals with that time concept.
Yeah. And speaking of that, one time I heard an individual telling the Crow creation story, and he says, he says the creator, first worker, he says, this is how he looks, and he describes what he's wearing, and he says he's always doing this, and then he'll go into like detail about what he's doing. And he said, when we ask him for this is what he says. So then he says it, and he sings this song. So then he sings it or whatever. And I was thinking of that, like the way he was telling the story kind of made it sound like he was talking about a guy like at the store, which is different than saying in a time gone by.
In times past.
Yeah. Like if I started a story that says, long, long ago. Yeah. Immediately the listener is disconnected from it. Not by fable. Emotion. They might still like it, but it's not attainable. It's something that happened way in the past. But I noticed the way Crow people talk, and there's a man named, they call him Awago, and he tells stories. He's been gone a long time now, but that's how he talks, He kind of tells stories like, and he reenacts the story, like physically reenacts it. He mimics voices. But when you think about that, if he's telling the story of a battle that may have happened in 1850 or 1840, and you're listening to it in the 1940s, the way he's telling the story places you in the event.
Yeah.
So that's why when people say
Yeah.
tribal people have a very, very strong oral history, I think it's because we don't tell stories. We've adopted that now. I noticed that's how Native people tell stories now. They'll say, this story has been told for thousands of years. And like already right there tells it's way back there, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like,
Handed down
yeah.
several generations.
Well, and, you know, and they might still say that a little bit, but then they'll go into the story.
Yeah.
But the way the story's told isn't like saying, this is how it used to be. This is
Yeah.
what they would say. They're talking more like, it's like, this story was told to me by so and so who learned it from so and so, and then
Yeah.
they start the story, and the story's right now. It's happening right now. Narcissus blood of the sick, or no, he's a blood Indian actually from Standoff. He's passed away now, but he said that when he's doing the Horn Society functions, holding the staff, he says, I'm when I hold this staff, I don't, I'm going to mess this up, but he says that I'm not only recognizing that I'm doing something that's old, but the past is happening right now. That what I'm
Yeah.
doing is the central act, that this thing is happening at this moment. It's a reflection of things that had been happening. It's not only a reflection, but it is happening. It's bringing the past right to the person.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's a powerful experience. So then if that's how you view time and that's how you kind of view the world around you, I think that's a very different, you kind of come out of it with a different thing, I guess. I don't know.
I agree. And I don't know if you remember that research I had passed around to you about that these archaeologists studying people's reactions or
Oh,
people's
the bog bodies?
yeah, and that's very similar to what you're talking about an experience of bringing the past, which could be at any length of chronological time, into the present. Um, it reminds me of that, and I think that holds a lot of truth to what we do today. The ceremonialisms that are still alive today, it places us in a time where that is where we think of it as the most strong or the strongest, or we're always striving for that thing right there. And then there was this other research, and I'll have to find the details of it, but it does um, detail when kind of the oral tradition started using the Goldilocks, three bears kind of approach, a long, long time ago in a land far away, how that little
So
piece started to.
someone has addressed this in research.
Yeah,
So I'm not just
yeah.
talking out of my
No,
beep.
Nope, you're not talking out of that thing. Your beeper. No. No, yeah, and I think one of our student interns, Keisha, I think actually addressed that in some of her writing. So we'll have to have her on and give us a little chat about that. But yeah, so I think there's multiple dimensions, if you want to put it into some uh some kind of academic talk, multiple dimensions of time. And it follows along the lines of what you said in the beginning, Marty, about this polychronic idea of time, where we see time from the standpoint of survival or the food quest. Sure, that happens on an annual, interannual basis, but when we're talking about things like luck and deeds and history, well, yeah, that can transcend that interannual time period. Also, the idea of the prophecy then comes into play as something then that can even see further in time. But I'm not sure how that situates itself in the whole spectrum of things we're talking about. But I think each tribe and tribal group have their own prophecy or prophecy makers. But now those, and it's hard to put a time period on it, but I don't know how far forward those kind of things look, and it would be hard to classify.
Talking about all this time stuff, it kind of made me think of something. And Marty was there when we went to Chicago, and we got to look at these shields in the Chicago Field Museum. It does kind of shake you a little bit in terms of time, because Because me and Marty both, I think, come from a time where Crow people, it's this mixed thing of like telling stories. And so they'll tell stories of, like how I was saying, like many years ago or way in the past. But then we also still have some people kind of tell stories in that old fashioned. But man, I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, and maybe Marty can talk more about this. When you hold an object like that, something, it like shakes you, man. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
something happens to where all of that stuff gets messed with in terms of like it's right now. Like you're looking right at something and you might think it's from two leggins or bull snake or charger strong or something, and as soon as you grab it, you're like, man, it places those dudes right there. Like, and
Yeah.
you're like, I don't know, it does something. I don't know, Marty, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I got that too, especially the shields that were there, that they have actual photographs of the person with the shield, and then it's like you're seeing that same shield right in front of you, and you get to see the vivid colors that they are, that's not shown in the picture, and it really does kind of erase that barrier of time. Like this person was real, and this object is kind of proof of that, and symbolizes that right now, right when we're standing in this spot.
Yeah. And I'd be interested to know if Brenda, if you've had any of those experiences or have anything to add on this particular topic. She's looking at me like, why are you asking me? We want to know.
What, the power of holding an object? Or
Well, I mean, that just anything in related to this idea of this multiple dimensions of time, because we all have to work, and we have a paycheck, and that really dictates a lot of our time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, we know our vacations are coming up, and we got these holidays, and so that part of our life is very regimented, and it happens the same every year.
Mhm.
But what other parts of your life kind of transcend that regiment of time?
Well, I know that if I run late on some things and I miss the time that it happens, I have a lot of regret. Like, oh man, I should have got it together so I could have went and done this or that.
Right.
Because timing is everything. But I guess I don't really have too much to say about it. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm just listening, and I stepped out. I stepped out for
Sorry.
a little bit, so I kind of missed what Marty was saying and what Aaron was saying, and so
I'm sorry. I'm
put me on the
monochronic.
spot.
Sorry. My chronic is mono.
Wah, wah, wah.
Aaron, you're muted, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. I mean, I'm just reaching for everybody's experiences with time, and I know we all have our different ideas about it, and sometimes it takes just a little discussion to bring it out and say, oh yeah, I can see this or that happening. But what
What
I
do you
don't
think?
quite go ahead.
Well,
What do you think?
maybe go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh no, because I was going to jump into something else, but I want to know.
Well, I was just
what
going to
your
say,
thoughts are.
archaeologically, did you see I think ABC News is where I seen it. They put out that the human occupation in North America has now been pushed back, or is perceived to be pushed
Yeah.
back to almost 30,000 years, which is
Yeah,
something I've kind
another
of always said.
11,000.
Yeah, I don't think that's far reaching. I don't think that's out of this world to think that. So
No.
30,000 years is a long time.
It is.
In
It is a long time.
anyone's standard of time, that's a long time.
What was the previous date? Was it like 20 or 22,000?
No. Marty,
No.
About 12,000.
12, 13,000.
Really?
Because Anzac Boy and Naya, and like there's one other human specimen that kind of like places us. So roughly, I think people would always kind of use the 15,000 year mark.
So right at the would that be at the height of the ice age or right near the end?
Right at the end of the late Pleistocene.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So then this new discovery in Mexico, a cave in Mexico, puts it back
Yeah.
another 11,000 years.
Yeah, another
Which,
11,000 years. So my argument was, okay, Anzac Boy, for anyone who doesn't know, was a boy that was found at the foothills of the Crazy Mountains that is like 12,500 years old. So
yeah,
that's a pretty easy number to find using genetics and DNA and the human
yeah,
that lab in Copenhagen that's really into that. And so
yeah,
but he was ceremonially buried. Okay, so that's different, because now that means a society has to function for a while to have ritual and ceremony and tradition. It has to
right,
function for a little while for that to happen. So the belief now, at least from, I think, more like preservation mentality, or like traditional archaeologists, I don't know if they think this way, but you apply the idea of ceremony and ritual being developed. So then you say, well, let's just round it off to 13,000 years old body, but he was ceremonially. So you can add 3,000 years to that, give or take, I think, depending on who you're talking to or any,
right,
and you can easily place that. You're like, man, 15,000 years isn't nothing to think that a society had existed for that long and for that
yeah,
body to be there. So then you have to think, okay, well then once you get to 15,000, then it's very possible to say something had to have existed. He came from a group, and he damn sure wasn't the oldest member of that group. And
right,
so before you know it, 6, 7 generations into something, even at that time was, I think the average was age 25. So you figure that's 4 generations is 100 years, 6, 7, 8 generations,
yeah,
200 years. Pretty easy to kind of start to think that. I mean, it obviously there's very crude kind of ways of thinking of things, but and
yeah,
generalizing a little bit. But I mean, you can kind of see that if to a native person, if you even to a native researcher, if you said, "Hey, did you just hear that 30,000 years is the new mark?" Most native researchers are going to be like, "Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like I think where our brains were going anywhere. Even if we didn't say 30,000 years,
yeah,
our brains were kind of like, we damn for sure know it's not 13,000 years,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Give me a break.
give me a break.
Give me a break.
Enough of this
Just
ballyhoo and tomfoolery.
what was it, you were teasing somebody one time and you said, what did you get your drumstick from, Anzac Boy?
Oh, yeah. Dude, that's a real specific joke, man.
Yeah,
It looked ancient, man.
I know.
Paleo drumstick.
It was.
It's like, God dang, pulled this drumstick out of an ice sheet.
Yeah,
This thing is old.
yeah, that
can't-
was
yeah,
that
can't
was
remember
pretty
who-
funny.
Yeah, I think
So-
you laughed.
I
I think that was,
was the only one. Yeah,
yeah. It's like, ah!
anyway, so yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think this we didn't get to what I was trying to get to, which was then how do we transform those ideas into a research structure or a methodological approach. And I think that's probably the more challenging thing to do, but we do have to be aware that we live in a different time because we are regimented by the clock. We're regimented by tools that measure things very precisely. So, developing a methodological approach that takes into account all of these things then becomes very challenging. So that's what I was trying to get at, but I don't think we're going to get to it in this episode. So maybe we can pull in some expert on our next episode that we can torture with our blather about time, and we can get some more ideas from that. What do you guys think?
I have another example of how modern natives kind of demonstrate their values of time. So say you went to a predominantly Euro-American event, which may start out with like a national anthem.
Yeah.
Well, when the national anthem is sung the way it was written, it takes 1 minute and 22 seconds. So, say you go to another Anglo-Saxon gathering where a Native American drum group was invited to open it up in a good way. And they sing
mostly in a good way.
In a good
They
way.
sing all four starts. They
Four
sing
starts?
all 4 30-second leads. You can do the math. It's way more than 1 minute and 22 seconds. And if you kind of are leaning towards the Euro-American side of the assimilation spectrum, you might be like, they're going for a third lead. one lead might have been good because these guys are going to be impressed, and then they're like, you hit that one lead, and then you end it strong, and everybody's like, dang, that was amazing. But then by the end of the 4th lead, these Euro-American side of the spectrum people will be like, is it supposed to go this long? Do I still need to be standing up?
Oh, my feet are getting tired.
And then by then they had time to think about, when this is over, do we applause or do we just kind of bow in gratitude?
Dude, I love it.
Exactly.
I love it because
so I mean it goes in my head, I've been assimilated. We're all assimilated to a degree, and I get like that, like, this is kind of getting long here, and it's just like, no, this is what you do.
You're right. And actually, I've been on the other side of that, where I'm the guy singing. Many times, me and Sean Dean has been that guy. And I'll be the first to admit, about the second start, I'm like, this is kind of overkill.
Yeah,
this is a little much.
Yeah. But because it's a performance.
Yeah, man, it's weird.
It's a performance.
I know we're in the weeds a bit, but I like the idea. Marty, man, you nailed it. Because then I've often thought, I wonder what they're thinking. While I'm singing, I'm thinking they have no idea what to do. People are like, do we stand? Do we clap? The hat's on, hat's off. Does the hand go on the heart? It's funny to always see that one guy that puts his hand on the heart. Then he kind of looks around, takes his hand off his heart. And I mean, I've seen guys salute, and then they're like, well, I don't know. I don't see anybody else saluting. And so, no, you're right, man. You spot on.
Yeah, it's like,
and that's like specific to like opening up some kind of banquet or some kind of public discussion or
soiree
gathering. Yeah.
The invocation that lasts 40 minutes is probably not conducive to the show that's about to happen. And
let's address that. The guy brought in to pray. We're going to open this up with a prayer, and then he proceeds to lecture people. And he makes you feel bad. Nobody knows our ways.
Nobody collects the berries the right way anymore.
This is not the way Grandma taught us. It's like, oh man, dude, like,
your kids are running around.
No, you know nothing. And then I go, can you sing the honor song now? And then we're just like, all right,
I guess.
Right. And then you got Marty the whole time with his kids. He's like, oh my God, hurry up. My kids are running around. You guys are going too long, man. I can't keep them still this long. And then the baby starts crying. And then the dang baby starts crying. Oh my gosh.
Everybody's staring at you.
Then someone's phone rings. And then they answer it. They answer to tell them this, and then they say, I can't talk right now. Christ, right button them like everybody else.
Oh, cripes. We're way out there.
But it's
pure
gold.
It is. That's it, man. That is it. Brenda, you had something to say. Go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, as long as they don't say amen at the end, I'm okay with whatever.
Brenda's one of those people who goes, woman.
Hey.
It's her story, not history.
Cripes.
Or what's the new thing? The BIPOC or what is it?
Yeah, what is that? BIPOC, yeah.
I got it. I got tagged in a post. The Indigenous archaeology someone posted and tagged Indigenous, and it said BIPOC anthropologist or something. And I was like, cool, right on. Not knowing what it was.
What is it?
I don't know.
It means Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I had to Google it.
We're going back to the color term, huh?
Yeah, we're going back to color, huh?
What the heck?
I guess so. I don't know.
That's very 1950s.
It is. I mean, nostalgic.
Are you a colored boy?
Oh God, let's not. Let's
It's not good.
Let's not. Just no.
Okay.
Anti-miscegenation.
Let's wrap
I'm gonna
this.
keep going.
Let's wrap it.
All right.
Are you guys ready? Let's wrap it up. I think we need to explore this a little more. Not much more, a little more, but definitely we need to address.
Let's spend some time on it.
Let's spend some time on it. But first,
all I hear,
I'll do the invocation, which will take at least 30 minutes.
Criticize.
Then we'll have a short break.
I can't see in this thing, and I can't ride in this thing.
All right, we're out. Are you ready?
Later.
Nothing else? We're good.
No,
we're
end it, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this episode. And to learn more, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at IRCSKC. You can find us also on Facebook and YouTube by searching SKC Indigenous Research Center. You can also visit our website at irc.skc.edu. Don't forget to join us next time as we continue our discussions on Indigenous research, Indigenous research methodologies, and Indigenous worldviews.